but it was almost like there was these arrows showing me in my mind where to pass, and I just kind of thought that's what it was. And so that's where I started understanding the concept of superpowers, because I can see passing lanes. And then with the databases, I understood just intuitively, how do I connect this data together? And that's when I started realizing, hey, folks have these different talents, and I understand what mine are. I'm starting to understand, and I'm going to put mine together with others. And then, it's kind of like the Transformers, you create this great super creature.
Welcome to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of technology. I'm your host, Aaron Chesney, with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. James, what are we talking about today?
I'm beautiful again after our point-counterpoint episode last time.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. You definitely have a face for radio.
Today we have with us one of my favorite people, Holly Laveling. Holly and I know each other outside of work from, we run in the same running group. She runs a little faster than I do, but we're still in the same group. I'm the safety coordinator. I just go at the back of the pack and make sure everybody's safe. Like if anybody falls down, I'll eventually find them. That's my role. Holly, welcome to the Forward Slash. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Hello, and thanks for having me. I still consider myself a software engineer. When I introduce myself, I still say that. I can't say I code as much as I did back in the day, but I'm an engineer. I've worked here in the Cincinnati area for about 25 years now. And I'm a mom, so I had to work at different jobs, and I had to keep moving around to make sure that my jobs were flexible, because when a kid is sick or when you have to, volunteer for the PTO, that was me. And for a while, I actually did some freelance development in order to really have that flexibility. But the last couple of years, 5 years actually, I've worked at a place called the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati.
You said you're currently at Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati, FHLB as we call it. What even is that? I mean, some people may not be familiar with FHLB. It's kind of a unique business. Tell us a little bit about what they do.
So I'll be honest, I'd never heard of this place before I came here. And it's one of the best kept secrets in definitely in greater Cincinnati and the United States. So we don't market, and we actually don't even have signage outside of our building. And so we're this secret. And it's pretty interesting. We are a bank for banks. And there's 11 federal home loan banks in the United States. FHLB system was established in 1932 during the Great Depression. And our job is liquidity in terms of housing. We are supposed to be here for the banks, we're actually a co-op. So we have members, and we are here for them in terms of liquidity. We're here when other banks aren't. So we are very, very risk averse. We are safe. We are sound. We are deliberate. Pretty interesting. We have 3 main business activities. We have advances. We give advances. We have a mortgage purchase program. So we buy mortgages. And then the one that I really, really like that kind of drew me in, we have a housing and community investment program. So we give grants back to the community, and it's actually 15% of our profits. So a lot of things like Habitat for Humanity builds and all of these other things, those are funded by us, the Federal Home Loan Bank, through our member banks. But again, we kind of stay behind the scenes just supporting affordable housing.
That must be a very rewarding part of your job, I would imagine.
It is. You don't think about these kind of things. You want a mortgage and you go to a bank, but the bank doesn't just go in the back room and have, bundles and bundles of money there. So they call their friendly Federal Home Loan Bank. So any day we can be lending billions of dollars, and some folks might want it longer term for a mortgage, and some folks might want it overnight because they have certain, they have to have so much cash on hand. The Federal Home Loan Bank system, we're the second largest debt issuer in the United States behind the Treasury Department.
I could use some millions of dollars overnight. That would be.
When I
I wouldn't
first
mind that
got
at all.
when I got here and started looking at the systems, I had to go back and do the commas because I'm like, hold on, that's not thousands of dollars. That's millions and billions of dollars.
And it's not probably high volume from a transaction count perspective, right? It's probably more big dollar, fewer transactions, right?
It actually depends. It depends on what our members need. So sometimes we have larger members and they need larger amounts of dollars. Sometimes we have a savings and loan out in the middle of, Western Kentucky that might not have a large volume, but they might need a little bit every week. We are just here waiting. And typically we are the inverse of the economy. If the economy is doing poorly, people need more money from us because they don't have it. But if the economy is flush with money, typically they don't need their Federal Home Loan Bank as much.
What's the most challenging aspects of working at FHLB?
For me, our mission, we are here when other banks aren't. So for me, there's a lot of safety and soundness to make sure that we are here when other banks aren't. And in terms of me and my job, I'm in IT. So our systems have to be here when other bank systems aren't. So, our DR has DR. We have to make sure that our systems are available. We have to make sure that our members, when they need us, can, get advances or view their reports that they have with us or anything. So I think that is, for me, pretty challenging. Especially I have, we practice agile mindset, inspect and adapt, fail fast. Well, how can you fail fast if you have to be so dependable? So for me, that's actually part of the challenge that I love about this. My job's not easy, but game on.
Yeah, it's interesting when you have to provide that, and I've heard it phrased. We phrased it that way at Cengage when I was there. That dial tone level reliability, and that doesn't make any sense anymore. There is no such thing as a dial tone because nobody has a landline. But you pick up that phone and you hear, it's always there. You pick it up, it's there. You pick it up, it's there. That level, that reliability, that's a different mindset. For some folks, some businesses don't need that level of reliability, but you all absolutely do.
It is, and how could we provide that without creating a stressful environment for our employees? I don't want to be stressed. I don't want my folks to be stressed. So for me, it's a point of pride. Like, how can we do this? Other jobs you might not need to do this, but I get to do this. I have the opportunity to do this every day, and I want to be surrounded with people who also feel like, hey, this is a challenge that I want to go after.
So with moving quickly with agile and agility and whatever other buzzwords around moving quickly through a backlog, how do you balance that with security and compliance? Because I mean, I'm sure there's like a ton of red tape with it being a federal type entity and all that, moving large sums of money like that.
So you're right. Again, safety and soundness is paramount. And for me, it's all about the relationships. We have a great, very, very knowledgeable security department and also an enterprise risk department. And I really want to understand where they're coming from, what's important to them. I don't want them to say no and they don't want to say no, but if I can understand the risks that they're concerned with, I can think about how can we achieve this if I make sure we have visibility here or controls there or backup over here. So I don't. I tell you for a fact, we do not move as quickly as these cutting edge companies or something like that. But I'm pretty happy because we're constantly moving forward.
And especially in what we do, it is important, those relationships with compliance and security. and we absolutely as developers need to be empathetic to their job because it is a hard job, right? But the magic happens honestly where you have that reciprocity there when and most of the time it's there. We just assume as developers, oh, they're never going to let us do this or this. Or, I've just found out that like have that conversation, talk to them about what's your concern here, what are you trying to mitigate, and let's talk through this and maybe we can solve this problem in a different way. And but most people in those positions are pretty. They're not like the no, you always do it my way or the highway. They're not those kind of folks. They're usually pretty willing to work with you.
Yeah, especially if you're asking them, about what it is they need. Like what do we need to make your job easy? And they're all about that because a lot of times they have all these specs that they have to fill out and pass and different things like that. And it's so much better when you do actually talk to them and say, "Hey, how can how can we give you exactly what you need so we don't have to have this back and forth that goes on for weeks?"
I think about early in my career, IT folks worked kind of solo, right? You had a cube, you sat in your cube, you worked in your cube. And I think about how we work today. And it's almost like, a bunch of prairie dogs because, you see the head pop up from behind the monitor and you're grabbing the rollable whiteboard and you get some markers and now we're diagramming together and working together. And, folks have their heads downtime, but there's that power in the collaboration with folks bringing their superpowers and their experiences and putting all those lenses together. And you always get a better product that way.
I had to stand on a chair to prairie dog over cubicle. It was tough.
Now, we don't stand on chairs at the Federal Home Loan Bank because that's a high risk activity.
Oh, there you go.
You could potentially fall.
Yep. You're a liability risk. Oh, I see. Yeah.
That is actually not accurate because I am not taller than that. But my colleague, Tim, TG as we call him, TG is, I don't know, 6'6" or something. And so when I first started working there, he was showing me around. And I finally said, listen, do you mind bending down? Because he was talking over my head. I couldn't hear what he was saying. He's a foot taller than me. So poor TG's back was hurt because he was hunching over the whole first day, walking me around, showing me stuff.
We worked with a guy like that. He had to duck every time he entered a conference room.
My clock recently with the time change up on the wall, I couldn't reach my clock and TG walked on over, put his one paw up, brought it down, switched the time, and put it back up there.
His paw.
Sorry, TG. She said it, not us.
He's a former basketball player. It is a paw.
It does have a big paw. Yeah. So what when it comes to technologies, and you're moving these big dollar amounts. So what are your go-to technologies at FHLB? What do you guys use? What's your tech stack?
Yeah, in previous lives, we were best in class. That's usually with the companies that I've worked with. But here at FHLB, we are risk adverse and we want to keep things simple. And we also feel like it's very important to have support contracts on the software and the technologies that we use. And so we stick with one stack just for safety and soundness, and that's the Microsoft stack. So, you got your .NET, your SQL Server, or your Azure SQL DB, and then in terms of cloud, it is Azure. It is single cloud, and Angular front end as well. I'm a big fan of Angular.
All right, so you mentioned earlier you don't get to do any coding anymore, but like if someone was holding a gun to your head and said, write a software product right now, what are you reaching for? Like, what's your tech stack that you would do it?
Wow. It's funny that you say that. When I came to my current job, I've been here 5 years, they said, would you like a Visual Studio subscription? And first of all, I'm a Mac kind of girl, so I had to figure out how to use a Windows computer. But this was like a pivotal time. You could almost hear the music in the background. I felt like I was making a really important decision. And so I said, no, I would not like a Visual Studio subscription because in my role, I really shouldn't be coding. So I felt so proud of myself that I made this decision, but I'm pretty good at coding. So um, I've been offering to my folks like, hey, I can pair with you. We can pair program. I can help you with TDD and things like that. And nobody will take me up on it. And so I've like pulled up my chair and sat down, and I think I've scared people to death. Like they think I'm like assessing them or something. But in my at home, if I had to pick up something and do it, I've really enjoyed, Spring Boot backend and an Angular front end. And I just really, really like databases as well. I don't really like that middle. I like front end and I like databases. I'll tolerate the middle services.
Now, that we may have to not be friends anymore. You're not talking like stored procedures, are you? Please tell me.
No,
Okay.
no.
What, stored procedures are bad?
You know what? They weren't 20 years ago.
No, they
Oh.
weren't. That's the original like reusable logic, right? And
Yeah.
make sure everybody uses the same logic.
But in terms of, back in the day, back in school, you're learning these technologies. And when I started getting into databases and database design and the normal forms and everything just made sense to me. And I'm a former college athlete. I'm a soccer player as well. And I didn't realize that everyone couldn't see the passing lanes. But it was almost like there was these arrows showing me in my mind where to pass. And I just kind of thought that's what it was. And so that's where I started understanding the concept of superpowers, because I can see passing lanes. So I could really, understand how to move the ball. And then with the databases, I understood just intuitively, how do I connect this data together? And that's when I started realizing, hey, folks have these different talents. And I understand what mine are. I'm starting to understand, and I'm going to put mine together with others. And then, it's kind of like the Transformers. You create this great super creature.
So you talked about how playing soccer actually helped you in your IT career. Do you think that it's important for, developers or anybody in the IT world to get out there and do some type of sport type activity to make these kind of correlations and work different skill sets that may actually cross apply?
I do, and I think soccer is a really interesting type of sport, because with basketball, if you are taller, typically you are more successful. And in track, if you are faster, you are typically more successful. And soccer's kind of different, because you can have different skills and still be successful. You just have to, number one, modify how you play, and also how the team attacks problems. And I'm not a fast person, but because I saw the passing lanes, I was really able to make a plan in my head. Okay, when I get the ball, I can pass it here, here, or here. And I didn't have to necessarily be able to run around people. So, but I think it's really interesting, because that's how work is, right? Everyone has different skill sets, and you think about what yours are and how you can match them with other people. And also soccer, the game of soccer is really player centric. And let me give you an example. When I was done playing, I coached little ones. And I remember our first game, it was like a U12 team, U12 girls. And we had our first game, and there was a corner kick. And all the girls, I could see it like it was yesterday, they just turned their heads around and looked at me. And so I just turned around and looked behind me, because I thought like maybe there was a cow, because we were playing out in a field. No cow. So I yell out like, why are you looking at me? And they said, what do we do? And because they had been used to, having coaches who told them the play. And so I said, figure it out. And so, of course, a little tiny girl tried to kick the ball, and it took her 5 kicks to get it 10 yards. And, but at the next practice, we talked about it. But I said, how do you think you should solve that problem? And, of course, there's some parents who are like, win, win, win. But I'm thinking, problem solve, problem solve, problem solve. And that's just like work, especially with Agile. What do you think? How do you think we should solve this problem? And so we might have lost a game or two, but those same U12 girls, they came back. I was coaching high school. They kicked my tail. These girls, I would play their high school teams and they would win, win, win. And then they'd come over like, Coach Holly. And I'm thinking, I taught them everything they know.
Why did I do that? Now they're beating me.
Well, I was really happy to see that, but starting from a young age, hey, figure it out. What skills do you have? Because if you think about, again, basketball, the coach calls timeout, and all the players gather around the coach, and then the coach gives the play, and then the player's job is to execute the play, and that's okay. But I also like the idea of the player saying, what can I do here? Let me think about this. And they try something and it might not work, but then they learn from that experience and then they go and try something else. And that's what we do at work every day.
Yeah, and I coach hockey as well, and my guys are now kind of towards the end of their like youth career, and that was one of the things I would tell my guys too is when you come back from a shift, try and figure out what went wrong and how you can improve. In every shift, make it a little better, incrementally improve, and self-analyze, and because everybody's game is a little different, and it's one of those things. It's like the same way I taught slap shots. It's like these are the basics, but you have to go out there and hit puck after puck after puck to figure out how it applies to you and make little adjustments until you get the shot that you want. And and that worked for a lot of them. I actually had one of my guys in one of our last games actually score with a blue line slapper. I'm like, ooh, look at you go. And it's from those little adjustments. And I do think, in I think every sport has kind of its piece that can be applied to um IT. Like for me, it's the peripheral vision, because peripheral vision in hockey is really important because you got to be able to see all the other players, right? And I think that helps me in being able to see what's off to my right hand or left hand side that might interfere with what I'm trying to accomplish. And for like risk analysis and things like that, we talked a little bit about risk analysis earlier, but when we're coding, we think about risk to trying to accomplish a story or something like that. It's like, what are the risks in applying this? And sometimes you can see those hidden dependencies or hidden risks in a story when you take a look at the periphery, right? So yeah, I think that's really cool. And shout out to coaches. Right.
So I only learn about hockey from watching Letterkenny. So you said when you come back from a what? I don't know that I've ever heard that term.
A shift. So
Yeah.
yeah. So when you do a line change, it's your shift is like a minute to a minute and a half before you're gassed, and you gotta come back to the bench. And so it's very interval training centric. So you go out minute and a half of hard, you know, top speed skating in play, and then you come in and the next line goes out.
Yeah.
And so,
Hmm.
and that's your shift. So every time you come off of a shift, you think about the last shift that you had, and say, okay, what didn't go well in that shift? Like maybe you missed a pass, or maybe your position was off, or maybe you could have done something different with the puck to get a better scoring opportunity. Those types of things. So when you come off your shift, you've got your downtime between shifts on the bench, and you can think about those things, which is kind of unique about hockey because there's not a lot of sports where you get that like downtime to think about your play. Maybe like baseball might be one, like when you're at bat and so you're sitting on the bench, you can think about your fielding plays. that you had in the previous inning, when you're out in the field and that kind of thing. I don't know of any other sport that changes as rapidly, because I know soccer, you don't make subs that often, so you don't have that downtime, so you got to do it between games.
Um, my partner is a former ice hockey player. And so there's so many parallels with ice hockey and soccer. However, one big difference is I asked him to run with me, and he was like, oh, 5K, that's such a long distance. But he's used to the 30-second or 1 minute shifts. And so I can get him a couple races a year. He'll run a 5K, but he's like, oh, that was so long. And I'm thinking, oh, the 5K is my warm up for my other races.
Yeah, I sometimes relate. I think probably the closest sport to hockey is probably lacrosse, but I also have called it soccer on ice. So we've actually brought out a soccer ball and had them play soccer on the ice, which is funny. It's a bunch of guys skating around trying to kick a soccer ball on the ice. It's
Well, so you have the tactics, which are similar, but the skating itself is such an art. And actually, we had tickets to the Blue Jackets, season tickets. And so he would tell me all about look at the skate and all of these different things. And I just didn't realize that there was such an art to ice hockey. And it's so much more difficult. I mean, with soccer, hey, I just had to run on the ground, which although sometimes I had trouble staying on my feet. If you're listening to this, Coach Jordy, sorry about that. But this is a whole other level. And again, lacrosse, I really appreciate lacrosse. But again, that's running on the ground. It's a pretty interesting sport.
although if you think about like your footwork that you have to like, because I played some indoor soccer, and I'm like, I was amazed at like some of the footwork that some guys had, or some of the ladies, because I played on a co-ed team. It just the way they were able to manipulate and move the ball, it just was impressive. Like there was one guy, um, who was French and had been playing soccer a long time. He used to be able to do this thing where he would reverse the ball from the top with his toe. Like and he'd be able to move backwards and just move and turn the ball. I'm like, that's amazing. It's just like that's awesome.
With my coaching, I love starting with you littles, but they don't know any better. And so everybody has a ball and it's right foot, it's left foot, it's all different parts. And I would mentally, when I was preparing a training session, 1,000 touches for that session. Now, think about that. If you train a couple times a week, and I even encourage them and talk to their parents, if you have a little bit of a deflated ball and as they're, on the phone or watching TV, if you're just touch, 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 it's amazing. And even today, it just happened the other day, I knocked a glass off the counter and I caught it with my foot before it dropped. And it just becomes second nature.
So what about like at FHLB when it comes to like, are we going to build this or are we going to buy this? Like, how do you all go through those sort of evaluations at FHLB?
So we always do a buy versus build analysis, but one of the things that really attracted me to FHLB is we do a lot of custom development. And as a software developer or now development leader, that interests me because I really like solving those types of problems. But we have some pretty unique business model and challenges here. So at times we buy, typically we build, we will do an analysis. And we also, if we build, we can then support and we can be more nimble because if we need a change, we can implement that change instead of waiting potentially for a third party, a COTS software, the package to roll out or this or that. We can go ahead and make that change. And again, it's all about being there for our members and serving our members in the quickest way possible.
What about open source? Do you guys embrace open source?
I appreciate the beauty of open source, but again, in terms of risk, we do use some open source software, but we do have vulnerability and scanning and all of that kind of stuff, and we typically don't utilize a lot of open source software because of the vulnerabilities
It's pretty
or
common.
potential for them.
Yeah, it's pretty common in the high compliance world and risk averse world to not use open source. Hurts my heart. being an open source aficionado, but I get it. I understand.
All right, Holly. So one of the things we do here is what we call the lightning round, and it's a series of rapid fire questions. You're just going to answer right off the cuff of the first thing that comes to mind as an answer. For any of them, there's no right or wrong. Well, maybe in our minds there's a right and wrong, but for the most part, there's no right or wrong answer. So, James, you want to kick us off with your first lightning round question?
Yeah, I mean, we really want to be very, proper about this, of course. What's your favorite type of muffin?
Blueberry.
What's
Good
your
answer.
favorite number?
14.
Have you ever tasted soap?
Yes. Thank you, Mother.
Name one of the 7 dwarfs.
Sleepy.
I know this question is going to be tough. Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain. Also, negotiate my way out of both of those.
What's your ideal outside temperature?
80 degrees.
Would you eat a day-old taquito from 7-Eleven?
No.
If the toilet paper roll is really low but not completely out, do you replace it or leave it for someone else?
Replace it. I'm kind of OCD on that.
Would you rather come face to face with a miniature hippopotamus or a giant cockroach? Both are in a bad mood.
Miniature hippopotamus.
Do you Instagram your food?
No.
Super Mario Brothers or Zelda?
Super Mario.
All right. And for the final one, say something cool.
A.
Love it. Great.
That's fantastic.
And that concludes this episode of the Forward Slash. I'd like to thank our guest, Holly Laveling, for joining us today, and my co-host, James Carman, and all the folks that make this podcast possible. Hit that subscribe button to be informed when new episodes are available. Thank you for listening to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of technology.